Appreciate you.
Welcome to the September 7th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board. Seth, can we please have a roll call?
Mr. Chairman, John Black.
Here.
Travis Oakley.
Here.
Andy Layton.
Here.
Andy Shop.
Here.
Monty Dunn. Marcus Simmons.
Here.
Pat Darby.
Here.
Sonny Luzo. We have a quorum.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Has everybody here had a time to review them, and are there any addenda or changes that anybody wishes to address?
I'd like to make a motion we approve the minutes as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
John Black.
Yay.
Travis Oakley.
Yes.
Andy Layton.
Yes.
Andy Shop.
Yes.
Marcus Simmons.
Yes.
Pat Darby.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item number 3 on the agenda is the Hudson Carolina Colours Development Redivision for Parcel H-1A. And it goes on so on. Can we have a staff review of this item on the agenda, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is the general plan, final plan, consideration of redivision of Plat H-1A, parcel number 4. Applicant is Hudson Carolina Colours Development, LLC, on behalf of New Market HDS, LLC. Again, the name of the project, Redivision of Plat H-1A, parcel number 4. Waterscape, the location of the project is on Waterscape Way in the Carolina Colours community to the west of US Highway 70, C3 Commercial District, and we got 34.85 acres. This board, New Bern Planning and Zoning Board, granted general plan approval on July 6, 2021. The average lot size of 11.61 acres. And there's a total area, a dedicated right-of-way, 0.76 acres. And we have a performance bond in hand that's been accepted by the city attorney. Again, total acres is 34.85. And utilities provided by City of New Bern. You guys will recall, this is the parcel in question, it's across from the Harris Teeter on Waterscape Way. And we've got the on the plat. Not for record here. Any questions from the board?
Any members of this question have questions for the staff concerning this development? Having heard one, is an applicant here that you wish to address?
The applicant was a representative was kind of here. They had a family emergency last night around 3 o'clock this afternoon.
And are there any members of the public that wish to address this development, either for or against? Having heard none, the chair would like to entertain a motion to approve this item as outlined.
So moved.
We have movement to move it, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion accepted and seconded. Can we please have a roll call?
Yes, sir. John Black.
Yay.
Travis Oakley.
Yes.
Andy Layton.
Yes.
Andy Shop.
Yes.
Marcus Simmons.
Yes.
Pat Doherty.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now we have an interesting situation. We're going to be doing item number 4, which is a plan approval, and that's going to be followed by final approval. The staff review, please, on the Highlands Village application.
Thank you, sir. So again, item number 4, this is the general plan consideration of May Subdivision Phase 2. Applicant Highlands Village Apartments, LLC. Location is on Trent Road between Boulevard and Camden Square Drive. existing zoning is C4 commercial district. And it's 7.81 acres. See the aerial photograph here of the property. Trent Road. Access off the Camden Square Drive. And, City Departmental Review Committee reviewed the proposed plan for May Subdivision Phase 2 on June 11, 2021, and determined the plan meets requirements for approval. Staff has reviewed the proposed subdivision plan and finds that all of the technical and legal requirements for general subdivision plan approval have been satisfied. Therefore, general subdivision plan approval for Robert May Subdivision Phase 2 is recommended. Any questions from the board?
Now, my understanding is this is not bonded, but instead of a bond, in lieu of a bond, there has been an escrow account created and satisfied. Raymond, you understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I also, are there any questions concerning the development at all with the board members of this board?
Yeah, so subdivision plans typically go to Board of Alderman for final approval, correct?
No.
Or they're only here? Okay.
This year.
All right. That was it. I want to make sure we were not.
Randy Smith.
Used to.
Yeah, used to. I want to make sure, because I know the finals are here, I want to make sure that the subdivision didn't have to go to Board of Alderman. We're going to
Okay,
do the final next.
Subdivision general plan is always been approved by at this level.
Now, we're lucky enough to have a
Final
representative.
has changed.
Excuse me.
Okay.
We're lucky enough to have a representative of the applicant here, should we have any questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we weren't having a we're creating a procedural problem for ourselves.
Very good, I understand, okay. But at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt this application as presented. Do we have a motion to approve this plan?
So moved.
A motion, is that motion seconded? Second. The motion is moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Don Black,
Yay.
Travis Oakley,
Yes.
Raymond Layton,
Yes.
Aaron Schaub,
Yes.
Marcus Simmons,
Yes.
and Pat Doherty.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now, the next agenda is basically the final approval of what we just approved, the initial approval.
I can't imagine we wouldn't approve it if we just approved it. I mean, stranger things have happened.
Well, procedurally, at this point, I will entertain a motion to adopt the plan as presented for the final approval.
So moved.
We have a motion, is it seconded?
Second.
This motion is heard and seconded. Roll call, please.
Don Black,
Yay.
Travis Oakley,
Yes.
Raymond Layton,
Yes.
Aaron Schaub,
Yes.
Marcus Simmons,
Yes.
Pat Doherty.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now we go to item number 6, which is an application for rezoning. So we are making a recommendation to rezone a parcel of land.
Right.
And we have to present this in such a way that a recommendation for rezoning for the applicant Michael Raines is so moved. Staff review, please, of the Michael Raines application.
Thank you again, applicant, with us tonight, Mr. Michael Raines. The property is located at 356 Rocky Run Road. The existing zoning is R20. Requested is A-5F. 2 parcels total of 44.77 acres. And currently, the land is undeveloped and wooded. You can see Rocky Run Road down here. 2 parcels in question highlighted. They're quite deep, like that, a long way there. See the existing building, R20, R10 up here to the north and east. A5 over here. This is just going more to the north. You see it's more of the land property. A5, A5F. So got some details on the existing zoning, R20 rural residential district is designed to accommodate low density single-family dwellings with 20,000 square foot minimum lots. May not be serviced with city sewer service or multifamily dwellings that are serviced with city sewer. For the R20 residential district, promoting the general purpose of this ordinance, specific intent of the district is to encourage low-density single-family or multifamily dwellings, encourage preservation of the rural character of the land, prohibit commercial and industrial uses of the land, and any other influx of uses likely to render it undesirable for low-density development. Encourage the discontinuance of any existing uses that would not be permitted as new uses in the district, and to encourage development to take place in a manner that promotes a healthy environment. The proposed A-5F is an agricultural forestry district designed to promote forestry operations, low-density residential uses, recreational uses, and certain agricultural uses. Landfill, quarry, livestock, and similar uses that may negatively impact nearby residential uses with excess noise, other than traffic, are prohibited. Specifically intended at the A-5F agricultural forestry district, encourage the conservation of these areas of existing agricultural and forest resources, and promote low-density development. Prohibit non-agricultural and non-forestry related commercial and industrial uses of the land. Prohibit any other influx of uses likely to render the area clearing such zoning and classification undesirable for forestry, non-livestock farms, and low-density housing. Surrounding districts we saw earlier, north we've got R10 residential, to the south, R20 residential, adjacent to the east, R20, and again for adjacent to the west. Staff recommends the proposal to rezone the subject property to A5F agricultural forestry district is consistent with the character of the adjacent land uses and zoning classifications. They have found the proposed rezoning to be in the public interest and consistent with city land use and transportation plans, with the parcel being poorly suited for residential development. Now, there's no objection to the approval of the requested rezoning. Any questions from the board?
Are there any questions from members of this board? Now, the chair would like to entertain a motion to, is there any questions? I understand that the applicant, he's not here tonight.
Applicant's with us tonight.
Do you wish to address this at all?
No, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? At this point, the chair would like to entertain a motion to approve the application before us.
I'd like to make a recommendation, or make a motion that we recommend approval of the rezoning application of 356 Rocky Run Road.
And this is, remember, this is a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen to do so. We have a motion. Is that motion seconded? Second. Roll call, please.
Thank you, John Black.
A.
Okay. Travis Oakley.
Yes.
Brandon Wade.
Yes.
Dan Schaub.
Yes.
Mark Kelly.
Yes.
Pat Doherty.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Now we go to the Article 7, and I would like to involve Ms. Mosley with us. There's been some discussion amongst us concerning the role of the Planning and Zoning Board. If you take a look at Section 15.27, part of the duties of this board is to make recommendations to the change of the land use ordinance that we see that this board thinks would be helpful for overall approval of applications and whatnot. Would you agree with that?
I'm turning with you to that code section, but I do believe that it's within the authority of this board to make such recommendations.
Could you speak up, please? I'm deaf.
I'm sorry, the mask is for me.
It makes a big difference.
Mr. Chair, to answer your question, it's my understanding that yes, the Planning and Zoning Board does have the authority to make recommendations regarding the land use ordinance.
And any changes to the land use ordinance is actually bound by the approval or the denial of the Board of Aldermen. They have the final say of what's in the land use ordinance.
That's correct.
Okay. I would like to turn our attention to section 15-214 is a recommendation that we had whereupon we want to actually maintain a certain number of entrances and exits for the larger 150 unit divisions. And it was put before the Board of Aldermen once before, and the only change we might discuss it with other board members is instead of having a sentence describing the distance between those entrances, we would like to eliminate that last sentence altogether, whereupon we just specify that any division over 150 units has at least 2 ways in and out. Does everybody have the copy of what Seth sent us with our packets? I don't think this is in the current land use source. This was proposed, but the proposed number was 15-214.
Yeah, which subparagraph do you want to eliminate?
Is that number 5?
Number 5, paragraph 5.
Does anybody need a copy? You need a copy?
My own thinking is 1,000 feet apart, there's very few parcels that would happen to, and residential units wouldn't necessarily have all that kind of road frontage. They tend to be on what we would call flag type lots with limited access points. And by limiting it to 1,000 feet apart, which is 1/5 of a mile, would make development of any kind of parcel almost impossible. It's section 15-214, paragraph 5.
Yeah, 5 is the one that's proposed, so it's not on the...
Yeah,
Oh, it's not on
that's
there.
what I'm saying, it's a proposed thing.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's in the information of that. Seth, do you have a copy of Fort Packer?
I have the whole thing somewhere. I must look in the wrong spot.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, this group of edits or proposed changes came before us, and I don't know the date, but came before us some time ago,
Yeah.
along with some others. We recommended that the Board of Aldermen approve them and went before them. There was something in the group of changes that we sent up that was controversial. The whole package was subsequently voted down.
And what we're thinking, I've been discussing with some members of the board, that I would like to revisit this, but to break it up into pieces.
Absolutely, and we had a motion to that effect at our last meeting, and so I completely agree with that. I don't have a problem if we want to eliminate the last sentence.
I think it'd be helpful because the developers would have a reasonable objection that it'd ban a lot of property they wouldn't be able to develop at home.
Yeah, and I would encourage us to think about it like this. So if you take 150 lots, and again, this is linear thinking, but
Right.
But if you take 150 lots, if you did, they were 10 feet wide, that gets you over 1,000 feet. So I think 1,000 feet's reasonable, but I don't find that to be a deal breaker.
Well, I think 1,000 feet, I think you're looking at this slightly wrong. Yes, each lot's going to be more than 10 feet wide within the division.
Correct, and I would just...
But getting into a road, 1,000 feet is a problem. There are many roads in New Bern that are not 1,000 feet long, I would think. But you certainly need to have a substantial area. We're talking...
Wait a minute, if you had a parcel that was less than 1,000 feet wide.
On road frontage.
On road frontage, but
Correct.
way back.
Sure.
That would say one entrance and egress, even though it had more than 150 dwelling units.
No, I mean, you still have to have 2, we would have to waive 1,000 feet. So what I'm saying is, I agree with you. If your frontage is only 1,000, it's only 900 feet,
You can't do it.
Yeah.
then you can't meet this requirement. So, but you could meet the requirement for 2.
And the
But
other
again,
process-
makes perfect sense to me. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
So I mean, I have no objection to eliminating that last paragraph.
And
Or
the last sentence.
last sentence in that paragraph.
And the other thing too is hopefully the entrances will be on different streets altogether.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
And sometimes they might not be 1,000 feet apart.
that's not going to be, yeah, we won't be in control of that, and frankly, the developer might not be either, if they're landlocked, in other words. if
Yeah,
they
I
only
understand,
have-
but hopefully
yeah.
they will have
But,
it.
I think it's perfectly reasonable to eliminate that.
Or what might be able to happen too is the developer on a large development might be able to buy an access way for another entrance and exit.
Sure, any number of scenarios, I think eliminating the sentence is probably prudent. I don't see a problem with doing that.
So
Doesn't substantially change the edits that we're proposing.
Okay, so at this point, I would like to entertain a motion to make a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen for a change of the land use ordinance incorporating this language.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Certainly.
I understand that this board may be inclined to make a recommendation. In what forum or in what manner do you foresee making such a recommendation?
What staff is going to do is they're going to write the language for the change of the land use ordinance, as I discussed with Jeffrey and Seth. And that will be introduced as a motion from this board, I imagine, to the Board of Aldermen to approve such a change to the land use ordinance.
So are you envisioning and asking for this motion that a letter be sent to the Board of Aldermen or to the city
Well,
manager?
that's the way that has been done in the past, yes.
Which way is that?
That is a letter from this board approving a request for them to review a change of the land use ordinance to accommodate this change.
Okay.
Or group of changes in this case.
We want to revisit other parts of this for safety aspects.
So just to be clear, Don, what we are intending to send to the Board of Aldermen for consideration at this point is everything that's before us, or just
that little,
15-214?
just 15-214, just that small section.
Okay.
15-214, number 5.
Yeah.
The last sentence? Is that-
And the last sentence is going to be.
Well, okay. So not the edits that were discussed and proposed for number 4, for instance, changing from 1,000 feet to 750 feet?
No, I would just keep it as paragraph 5 and just keep it very short and simple.
Well, I think, if I may, what I would like to suggest is that we deal with the edits that we'd like to propose by section and send an entire section with our edits at a time.
I think we're better off. We tried that once before.
Well, no, we sent a bunch of sections. So, I mean, it was 8 or 10 sections.
I would actually tend to agree with Raymond. I think if you take this whole document, right, and then break it down into sections and send a couple that pertain to one section at a time, that way I think you're getting more bang for the buck when you send them up by sending snippets or sending a whole packet up there, because for whatever reason, I don't know what spooked the Board of
One
Aldermen.
of the big things was the turnaround sizes. That was a bit of a problem, and that was part of the whole thing.
Right.
And if we do these, we're going to have more time to do them in sections as time goes on. But I think we just had a terrible accident in Fairfield Harbor where the road was closed. There was no way in and out.
Right.
The board of supervisors for the county is going to be sending a request to DOT to increase the access to Fairfield Harbor by doing a DOT study. It's a beginning. It's something like a Balfour Declaration, but we've got to remember 20 years after the Balfour Declaration was made, or more like 30 years after the Balfour Declaration was the United Nations approved the state of Israel. So what I would like to see is us start little bits at a time and get little bits passed, and we can build upon it. And if we give them a simple issue that, right now, there's no way for this board to disapprove a large development with one entrance and one exit, just one way in and out, I would like to see them vote on that and that go piecemeal. The more we put on, the more complicated it gets.
Well, I'm not trying to complicate it, and I agree with you to a certain extent. I'm just thinking that, I kind of agree with Raymond, like, instead of sending them, a 20-page, I sit in those aldermen's meetings, so I can tell you, you send them 20 pages of anything, it's, right,
Yeah, the headlights.
exactly. So what I'm saying is this, is that, yes, we take parts of it, but the parts that, if we can lump 2 or 3 of them together that pertain to each other, I think you're gonna get a better outcome.
Okay.
I think we're trying to say the same thing.
So I think maybe a better way to say this is our time is valuable, and we need to also understand that the alderman's time is
Sure.
valuable. And rather than sending parts of individual sections, I would like to deal with an entire section at a time. So I think if we deal with all of 15-14 at once, there's really not much in here. I mean, and so
Okay,
to
well,
deal
what-
with that section at a time, I think the alderman would appreciate
Right.
our thoughtfulness and consider what we are asking them to consider.
What if we do this then, Raymond and Travis? What if we form an ad hoc committee, just a general committee for the changes, and we could set up a meeting to address section 15,
So-
214, and
So why not discuss it right now?
we can discuss it right
So
now.
that's what I would propose we
Okay.
do. So if we want to talk about changes that we would like to propose for 15-14, let's go through the changes that we have outlined before us right now,
Okay.
and then decide as a group if we want to tweak something, like we have just done with the last sentence of paragraph 5, although I don't think we've actually voted on that yet. But what I would propose is we look at the entire section. We make a motion with any changes that somebody make a motion with any changes that we agree are necessary, like deleting the last sentence of Article 5, and then, or subsection 5, and then deal with that entire section and send it on. I think we have better success like that than
Okay,
take a
well,
little bit
let's
of
do
pieces.
so. So let's review it, section 15-14. It starts on my page 5 of 11. Is everybody there?
Three of them.
3 of them, excuse me, you're right. Okay, so,
The first change that I see, Mr. Chairman, is in subsection 4, which is no temporary dead-end streets in excess of 1,000 feet is what is current in the ordinance, and our proposed change was to 750 feet. And then we added, as determined by the Director of Development Services, or their designee.
okay, and do you want to maintain those changes?
I see no reason to make adjustments to them now. We thought it was a good idea when it came before us the first time, and I tend to think that our logic was sound.
Okay. And we just discussed Article 5.
Right.
And, okay, so now we go to subsection B. Is there anything there that you would recommend?
Nope.
Nothing in there.
Yeah, so no changes proposed, and I would not propose a change at this point.
Okay. Okay, so
leave it as written, or I think
Mhm.
that's
leave
fine.
it as written, with the only exception being essentially the Article 5 drop in that sentence about the 1,000 feet.
Well,
Someday, but not today.
And then there's one other change.
yeah, there's some other changes farther down, I believe.
Development connectivity requirements,
Yeah.
section 4.
Correct. Which is all under the same
Right.
section of 15-14. So, and that under 4 is design and dimensional requirements. And that is all cross-access features shall be constructed with a minimum width of 24 feet. And I think that was changing the written number to a numerical number. Now, I don't remember why we did that, but it's pretty clear when you see that. And I think that may have been, that was occurring throughout the ordinance.
Yeah, just to make it consistent, it's the same style.
Correct. And so I see no reason not to go ahead and deal with that now. So that's not a substantial change to the ordinance. It's just what I'll call housekeeping. That's right.
Right.
And I think the same thing occurs with the five below. That is more of a housekeeping matter. And so I think, and again, this is my logic, I think the Board of Aldermen would appreciate seeing this entire section. This is what we're proposing. They can see exactly what we've seen, that this is housekeeping, and you know, they can make, and then they can discuss the last sentence of 5. In fact, if we, what we talked about here, if we decide to eliminate it, they wouldn't even see that necessarily, other than in the minutes of this meeting.
Okay.
That's what I propose.
It sounds like a good proposal. At this point, I would like to hear a motion to prepare a draft letter for the Board of Aldermen based on the changes that we just discussed, which is most importantly expunging that last sentence concerning, in section 5 there, concerning the 1,000 feet separation between entrances and exits.
Okay.
Do we need to include in that letter our rationale behind the change?
I don't think we have to do that, but
I think it might be wise.
Jeffrey, what would you think of that?
I'm sorry, I was reading the ordinance. What was the question?
Thanks for paying attention, Jeff.
I was paying attention right until that
A background letter.
Well played.
Touche. You made my mind go. I was like, oh, we're housekeeping. I got a few more housekeeping things I can.
Well, basically what we're discussing is having a background of why this board is making a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen for these changes.
I think some of that makes sense, but if we're just changing numeric, you know.
Well, that's what we're going to start.
Well,
But
we're
the
also,
second entrance and egress, I think,
Sure.
needs an explanation.
Absolutely.
You know, for
yeah,
specific.
so we're proposing to add all of subsection 5 with the exception of the last sentence. And essentially all residential developments containing 150 lots or more shall be provided a second point of street access from the development to a certain public street. And what we have more or less agreed here, we hadn't voted on it yet, but is that the last sentence, second point, the said second point of street access shall be a minimum of 1,000 feet from the first. And so, you know, the logic that was presented, and I think it's sound, is if you have the scenario of less than 1,000 square feet of front or 1,000 linear feet of frontage on a street from a development that only accesses a single street, you can't meet that requirement. But we'd still like to keep the requirement of 2 means of egress and ingress, for that matter, 2 points of access. I have no issue with that. So I think we're proposing more than just housekeeping. In subsection 4, we're proposing change 1,000 feet to 750 feet and add the last sentence, add all of subsection 5 with the exception of the last sentence, and then the housekeeping of the numbers.
And that's basically the change to the language of the land use ordinance. And Ann is suggesting, or in the letter sent to the Board of Aldermen, why we're proposing this.
Essentially the reasoning for subsection 5. I'm not sure it's necessary, but
Oh, I think it is.
but
Because you're hitting them like a deer in the headlights on this. And I think if you give them reasoning they can work with, we stand a better chance of having it passed.
Now, what we can do maybe is have an ad hoc committee review this letter going forward as we form and review other parts of the changes to land use ordinance for improved safety and access.
Jeff, what's your thoughts? Hearing deep thought right now.
Yeah, well, I think the working group is a good idea.
I do too. I think it takes up our time as a whole board otherwise.
And then,
Yeah, we can work language.
So in the meantime, what we're going to be doing is proposing that the Development Services comes up with a letter, with the actual changes proposed, which is the biggest is just dropping that sentence in this section, and that the ad hoc committee would be working with the letter to be presented to the board of Aldermen as to what the changes are, which you're going to provide that exact language to, and this committee will work on drafting the part of why such changes are being recommended to the board of Aldermen.
I'm sure the steps make sense in my mind. I think the ad hoc committee is the working group, is the first step.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right, so
and then you make the language, you understand the reasoning, you formulate that letter to the working group. When you're done, create the letter.
right. So if we're going to create a working group, then there's to review what we're talking about, then there's no need to have a motion to send this to the board of Aldermen.
Correct.
We just need a motion to create the ad hoc group.
And Mr. Chair, as a point of clarity, this is a public body, and all of the open meeting laws apply.
Yes.
Any committee that you create, subcommittee, also is, the open meeting rules will apply to that subcommittee. So minutes, record keeping, all of those types of things. I would recommend, instead of a ad hoc committee, making a working group of less than a quorum.
That's right.
And that may be a more efficient use of your resources.
And so what you're saying is that the proposal should be for a working group, not an ad hoc committee, so we don't have to comply with all the minutes and whatnot.
4 or less?
Yes, sir, of 4 or less board members.
Okay, so at this point, the chair would like to hear a motion to create a working group to propose changes to the land use ordinance for safety and development concerns that we have.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is that motion seconded?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion second. Roll call, please.
John Black,
Aye.
Travis Oakley,
Yes.
Raymond Lake,
Yes.
and Shout,
Yes.
Marcus Simmons,
Yes.
Pat Doherty.
Yes.
And the motion passes. Okay, at this point, Ann Shout has expressed significant interest in chairing this working group. Are there,
So good with short-term rentals.
I told him I wanted to work on it, and he said, you could be the chair.
yeah, I know how to pass the buck. And do you have any objections being the chair?
No.
Okay, are there any other members of this board? That member is limited to 4 altogether, including the chair. I would like to serve with you if that's possible.
Thank you.
And does anyone?
Travis?
Sure.
Anybody else?
I will if none of my colleagues would like to serve.
Well, I think you would be an excellent addition to the
Okay,
group.
so we have our 4 working members then.
Okay, Ann is going to review her calendar and establish a schedule. Now, at this working group, we are allowed to have members of the public obviously come there, and I would like to send invitations to some boards of the Aldermen so they're fully aware of what we're doing. I think that might be helpful.
Definitely.
The last thing I want to do is hear the alderman come up and say, we had no idea this was going on.
Yeah, that can happen, because they can
And
be
it can.
sleeping like Jeff was before.
So I don't want them to feel like they've been gobsmacked. I want them to be brought along. And
Gobsmack sounds like it comes from some kind of Wagnerian opera.
doesn't it? I love it. It's English.
It's like the older.
Oh, it's very much colloquial English, and
That's tight.
that's a great word.
Jeff?
Yes.
Go ahead. You look like you're
I
getting
just, I don't think it would be a bad idea for the group to meet and understand all the issues first before inviting others into the group. Having done this 1,000 times in my career, I think it's best that all 4 of you get a great, solid, firm sense of what the issues are, what the language should look like, and then take that next step. That's what the working group is for. My opinion, just sharing it.
Jeff, to prevent developers from balking at what we proposed, would it behoove us in the long run to include a developer so that he can let everybody know what's going on and make sure everybody understands the thinking behind it?
That won't hurt. I'll just share with you that what you're holding in your hand was 18 months of developer input.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a couple of developers and a working group, both with staff and board
6
members.
meetings.
Yeah. And it's still,
It still didn't.
I mean, it's still the same problem. So you can't prevent that. All we can do is base our recommendation on sound logic and you know, and hope the Board of Aldermen follow through on our recommendation. But you know, they have no obligation to do so.
Yeah, are we allowed to politic the Board of Aldermen for this?
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
Oh, you're not, sure, I mean.
We can discuss it with them.
Absolutely,
Sure.
yeah, but I think it's good for the group to have one voice, have one document,
Yeah.
understand all the issues, and we can sit and talk about all the other issues.
Yeah.
Things that you may not know or have thought about.
Well, I think we also, some of us need to know the history on what happened before, because we
Well, what
weren't on the
happened
board when it
before-
did.
Well, what happened before was much more encompassing.
Yeah, but
And we had that, what?
Well, so I think there were a handful of edits or changes proposed, and one of the handful was controversial. That is to say, a developer balked, as you say. And so since it was all presented as a package, it was either you get all the packages passed, all of the proposed edits passed, or you get none. And so the choice that was ultimately made by the Board of Aldermen was the path of least resistance, which was none. And so all of them that had come before, gone through the work group, and developers that were included, agreed with, and came before the Planning and Zoning Board, we sent to the Board. They were all booted. And that's why I think a section at a time is, you know, if you find a section that's not controversial, I think 15 through 14
yeah, it makes
is
sense.
one in particular that I think we can all agree on, and I think Board of Aldermen would probably agree with us as well. But that's the sort of thing we can discuss in the work group, you know, and I tend to agree with Jeff. It's not, we can always have a meeting with just the members of the Planning and Zoning Board and staff initially, and then we can decide if we want to invite members, you know.
What I'd like to see is to get the four of us up to speed and on the same page.
Sure.
And then after that, we can make a determination on what we want to achieve and how we want to do it.
Sure.
Then we start bringing people in.
If
But
we
before
need-
this
yeah,
thing
if we
ever
need to.
goes before the Board of Aldermen, I personally think we need to make sure that the aldermen understand what's going on, and we need to make sure that everybody else that it will affect knows what's going on and the reasoning behind it, so that maybe we can dispel any opposition.
Sure. I mean, that's why we have these meetings. It's the Board of Aldermen's obligation to pay attention to what we're doing here. But we know that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
At the same.
Pretty
time-
much all the time.
At the same time, by changing section by section, we want to keep the changes more confined and simple than.
Well,
than
focus. I would use the word focus.
Focused, yeah. And I don't think that changing each section should involve that many meetings.
No, I don't either.
Just,
I would agree.
just for my own knowledge, because again, I wasn't part of this board. Do we know what specifically caused the whole packet to get kicked back? Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we know. I think it was the cul-de-sac dimensions was the big thing, and it was tied to an appendix in the in one of the building codes.
Yeah, well, some national.
And so the appendix
Fire
is,
department.
the appendix has to be, sections of the appendices of the building code are not technically code unless accepted by local ordinance, and that's what got it all tangled up. And so unfortunately, we had a whole bunch of meaningful edits that got tangled up in with that and became, you know, collateral damage. And so, and that was the motion I made last meeting, was to, let's look at these on a section-by-section basis or a piecemeal basis, and send them back to the Board of Aldermen for consideration, and maybe extract them from the more controversial items. So no problem with the work group. I mean, I just voted that we form one. What I'd like for us not to do is to get tangled up and drag this out for a long period of time. When understandably, some of us were not on the board when we did this last time, but there was some pretty sound logic and some pretty good thought that went into this last time, along with meeting with staff and with developers. And so I would give some credence to the work that was done by the previous board, and that's what we'll talk about at our work group.
I definitely agree with that. I think if you guys did that much due diligence and spent that much time on it, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel either, because if that much time was invested in this thing.
Yeah, and that's not to say that,
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
well, and that's not to say that there's not a meaningful change to be made. I mean, we've just talked about one
Sure.
tonight, eliminate, that's sound logic, makes perfect sense. So it's not to say that that was perfect work. There's no such thing as a perfect ordinance, and so we know that.
But
And,
Raymond, we have some groundwork to go from.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's the point. We'll take this and
Yeah.
work from there.
That's what I'd like for us to do.
Sure.
Okay, and then obviously the staff is going to support us. We're going to have access to this, to the building for
Yeah.
meetings. And Ann is chairing it, so she's going to set up, schedule a first meeting for us. And we have each other's emails, so I think this part, we can move on from this section. Our next part is a motion to adjourn.
So the only thing, if I may,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, add is that we want to make sure our schedule is conducive. If we agree as a work group that we want to send something to this board, we have to have time for it to be prepared and put on the agenda and posted. So you will want to make sure our meetings are far enough in advance of these meetings to meet all of the public posting.
I also want everybody to realize that there will be an election of the Board of Aldermen in March. So we have to decide whether we want to go with the new group of aldermen with everything or split it up.
No, we don't want to go with everything. That just didn't work. It has to be-
I almost find that to be irrelevant. Our work is, I mean, I know what you're saying, Ann,
I
but
don't,
the
because
work we're doing as a part of this board is, I'm gonna leave politics out of it. And I realize that that's not always, can't always happen that way, but
there's enough discord about who's on the board right now that you may not see some of them reelected. And you've got to start with somebody that doesn't understand anything.
I'm okay with that.
Because that's the way it's going to work anyhow.
Well,
I mean, that's just the way it works.
I'm not sure if they're on the board, they understand anything, so.
Well,
But I think what Raymond was saying,
well, I'm saying we ought not to let our process get tangled up in election.
Sure.
That's
Absolutely.
and to get these simple changes done shouldn't take that much longer for us to draft a letter with the language change.
What is the time frame, just so we'll know ahead of time, from the time we decide on a section change?
Well, so staff has to have time to prepare it, and it has to have time to be.
Yeah, I'm just
so-
asking
3 weeks
Jeff.
before the meeting.
Yeah.
So what?
3 weeks.
6 weeks, 4 weeks?
Well, you know, we're essentially
For a
from this
given
meeting,
meeting.
next Monday is our deadline for the next meeting.
Right.
Then we put everything in motion.
So that'll be the fourth Tuesday meeting of the month, next Monday's deadline? Or is it for the next day's meeting?
We're 3 weeks ahead. So this meeting today, our
It'll be the end
deadline
of the month meeting.
was 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so it'll be the end of September meeting,
Well,
the
Yeah.
fourth Tuesday
oh, and
meeting.
I was not even speaking about Board of Aldermen. That'll take care of itself basically. I was talking about
No,
for our meeting.
No, I want to know what our time frame is for the Board of Aldermen.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
That's a little different.
so that's
Right.
2 meetings a month.
But our meetings take care of that on itself. So when our work group decides to present
Yeah.
something to this board, that's the time frame. I want to make sure that we have time for staff to prepare the material
Yeah,
to
so
present
what-
to this board.
If we start right now, could we get something ready for next month, or is that pushing staff
That's
too
fine.
far?
Well, I don't think that
Right.
works. So the way, and I
2
don't
weeks.
have a photogenic memory of calendars.
I don't see why we
So the
can't have
meetings
it
are
November.
Tuesday night, second and fourth Tuesday, first, what are we?
Yeah, let's
Monday.
talk about this board, because
Oh,
again,
well, I was answering Ann's question.
yeah,
So when we have an Board of Alderman meeting on a Tuesday, all our agenda items for the next meeting, 2 weeks from then, are due on that Friday.
Gotcha.
So that's, you know.
But I mean, we send things to the Board of Alderman all the time from this board, right? So
Yeah.
that just falls in the normal time.
Yeah, we usually dovetail it pretty well.
What I want to make sure is that our work group, when we say, okay, we
Yeah.
talked about this one, we're ready to send it to the planning and zoning board,
Yeah.
that we have enough time for staff to prepare the item
Oh, sure.
to come before the board and that it gets on the agenda in the time frame for post.
All that
So it's
stuff
2 weeks,
comes,
I think, right?
comes down to days, honestly.
Yeah.
The most important thing is to have a good product. You know, if it's a 5-day, I mean, we're not talking months of difference here. We're talking at the most, it's 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what,
Maybe
I
not
think
the
So
worst
you
case
tell me it's a
scenario,
quick
so-
turnaround.
Yeah.
Quick turnaround for the planning and zoning board, and then, like I
Right.
said, the alderman board kind of takes care of itself, because once you
Yeah.
prep it, and then
Two
they
a
already
month,
know it's
I
on
mean,
the
we're getting-
schedule.
So we ought to be able to see something in front of the Board of Aldermen sometime in November.
Sure, yeah, that's very good.
It's realistic.
If
Yeah.
they choose to take it up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ms. Mosley, do you have anything to add?
No, the only thing, and I probably need to speak a little louder, my comment at the end there was.
It's subject to the Board of Aldermen whether or not they want to hear it.
Correct. So sending the letter, even if it's in the time frame for the agenda packet to be put together for the Board of Aldermen, is not guaranteed to take up the issue. But certainly considering their timeframes is prudent. That's all I have to add, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to make a motion we adjourn. Sorry, I hijacked that.
Don't leave the chair hanging on that one.
Sorry, yeah, I hijacked that, so, sorry.
So we have a motion to adjourn, is that motion seconded?
Second.
We have a motion that has been seconded, is that the roll call, please?
Back,
Yay.
Travis Oakley.
Yes.
Randy Rowe,
Yes.
Ann Sharp,
Yes.
Marcus Simmons,
Yes.
Scott Doherty.
Yes.
Motion passes, you're adjourned.
We are adjourned, thank you.